Thanks, and thanks for being here. So with Japheth and Ephraim. So the Ephraimite forces were called out, and they crossed over to Zaphon. These locations, it's like pick a country you've never been to and listen to names and places and go attack, and it's just hard. I should have kept my map, but it's not specific enough to have all of some of these small places. I did have a map when we were going through Joshua of where all of um, the different tribes were divided up, but it didn't have all the cities. So even if we would, I don't think it would have Zephon in there. So they said to Jephthah, "Why did you go to fight the Ammonites without calling us to go with you? We're going to burn down your house over your head." So we're going to burn your house down with you in it. This isn't the first time that a group of people has gotten upset when a victory happened and they didn't get invited to go and help defeat the other group of people. However, most of the time, if they'd have been invited, they'd have said no. So it's kind of a moot point, but they're upset and enough to burn his house down over his head. That's just crazy. Jephthah answered, "I and my people were engaged in a great struggle with the Ammonites, and although I called, you did not save me out of their hands. When I saw that you wouldn't help, I took my life into my own hands and crossed over to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gave me a victory over them. Now, why have you come up today to fight me?" So he's like, "I did invite you. You didn't show. I won. Now you're mad because you didn't show? Please." Jephthah then called together the men of Gilead and fought against Ephraim. The Gileadites struck them down because the Ephraimites had said, "You Gileadites are renegades from Ephraim and Manasseh." The Gileadites captured the fords of the Jordan leading to Ephraim, and whenever a survivor of Ephraim said, "Let me cross over," the men of Gilead asked him, "Are you an Ephraimite?" If he replied no, they said, "All right, say Shibboleth." If he said Shibboleth because he could not pronounce the word correctly, they seized him and killed him in the fords of the Jordan. 42,000 Ephraimites were killed at that time. Jephthah led Israel 6 years. Then Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried in the town of Gilead. There are some strange things going on here. Now, I just see it's the same word here, and I need to go look this up because if they're killing people over mispronouncing this word, we might want to know what the word is. So I use Blue Letter Bible. It is not the most advanced, but it is a user-friendly thing. So we are in Judges 12. And what verse was that? Verse 6. Just making sure if the spelling was the same in both, and it is not. Okay, so you wouldn't know this. Oh, maybe did it show it there? Let me look. Let me check. Maybe I read it wrong, or I noticed it wrong. Okay, the S was missing here in the second one. I did not notice it. Sibboleth. My brain just read it the same both times, but it is a different spelling. So this is an SH. This is an S. So I'm going to look up both these words a minute. And I don't know if this will work. So we'll see if it'll let you hear the pronunciation or not.
Strong's H, 7641, Shibboleth, Shibboleth. And second entry, Shibboleth, Shibboleth.
All right, let me know if you could hear that or not. I don't know if you could.
Strong's H, 5451, Sibboleth, Sibboleth.
So I don't know if you could hear that. Oh, you hear it? Okay, good. I didn't know if this was set up to that. So yeah, so you can listen to how they're supposed to be pronounced. And well, let's look up the meaning. An ear of grain or wheat, and flowing stream, ear of grain, head of grain, as grow. Okay, so they're at the water, and you need to say the one that is water and not the one that is grain or head of wheat. Although this one has the meaning of both, the other one has only the one meaning. Interesting. So anyway, looking up words here. I like to do that at times. This one seems pretty interesting to, if you're, say, flowing river and you say, you're a corn, a little bit different there. So they couldn't pronounce it. And then if you haven't been with us, this is one of the things that we'll see often is at the end of it, there will be, and it's translated led here, and some translations will say judged, because that's literally what the word means. He judged Israel 6 years. So it'll be a summary of the length of time that he's doing this. So here's the thing on some of these. Look at how short this one is. The last one was several chapters. We're getting to Samson, and Samson's going to be one of the longer ones. And if I accidentally put a P in there, I do that often. I say Sampson instead of Samson, and it's all right. It's all good. Oh, the bot has to be sub gift. Oh, okay. Interesting. I'll figure that out. Okay, back to our text. After him, Ibzan of Bethlehem, house of bread, led Israel. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters. He gave his daughters away in marriage to those outside his clan, and for his sons, he brought in 30 young women as wives from outside his clan. Ibzan led Israel 7 years. Then Ibzan died and was buried in Bethlehem. So really, not much to say about him. He just led. He gets his name mentioned, and the most interesting thing about him was the number of kids he had, and they married outside the clan. So, all right. Well, however that worked out. Okay, next guy. After him, Elon, the Zebulonite. Wow, that's not easy to say. Led Israel 10 years. Then Elon died and was buried in Aijalon in the land of Zebulun. Okay. Yeah, look at, he gets 2 sentences. That's it. After him, Abdon, son of Hillel, from Pirathon, led Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons. He rode on 70 donkeys. Oh, who rode? Not he rode. Who rode on 70 donkeys. He led Israel 8 years. Then Abdon, son of Hillel, died and was buried in Pirathon in Ephraim in the hill country of the Amalekites. So, if you're looking for random scripture verses to quote to people, here you go. Here's some really random scripture passages to quote. Just do Judges 12:12. That might be an easy one to remember. Then Elon died and was buried in Aijalon in the land of Zebulun. That would totally be a random out of context quote. Give which bot a sub, will whisper you. Okay, so you're just talking about getting stuff on stream and doing that. Okay, sounds good. So now we're into Samson. So this might be one you're more familiar with. I don't know if we'll get all the way through Samson today, or he might be longer than the number of chapters we have. So again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. So this is the normal pattern that we've been seeing, is the Israelites do evil, God delivers them into the hands of the enemies, then they're going to cry out, and then there's going to be a judge who will be raised up. So a certain man of Zorah named Manoah from the clan of the Danites had a wife who was childless, unable to give birth. Notice how often this happens. So this is another time that this has happened, that she's childless and unable to give birth. We just had this with Rachel. We previously had that with Sarah. We're going to see that again and again throughout Scripture. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, "You are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. Now see to it that you drink no wine or fermented drink, and that you do not eat anything unclean. You will become pregnant, and your son, whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazarite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines." When the woman heard, or sorry, I'm having this problem again. I'm jumping words and do that every once in a while. When the woman went to her husband and told him, "A man of God came to me. He looked like an angel of God, very awesome. I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name. But he said to me," I love how she's telling this story. This is awesome, because this sounds like a conversation that would happen with my wife. It would be, she'd ask me, "Well, where did he come from?" "I don't know. I didn't ask." "What was his name?" "I don't know. He just told me this great story. He told me this, so I'm telling you what he told me. I didn't ask questions." I'm liking her. "But he said to me, 'You will become pregnant and have a son. Now then, drink no wine or other fermented drink, and do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be a Nazarite of God from the womb until the day of his death.' Then Manoah prayed to the Lord, 'Pardon your servant, Lord. I beg you to let the man of God you sent to us come again to teach us how to bring up the boy who is to be born.'" Oh my goodness, that is a great thought. And "I beg your pardon," or "Pardon me," or I know this might be out of the ordinary. We don't know how to bring up a Nazarite. God help us. Praying for their son before he's born. God heard Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman while she was out in the field. But her husband Manoah was not with her. The woman hurried to tell her husband, "He's here, the man who appeared to me the other day." Manoah got up and followed his wife. When he came out to the man, he said, "Are you the man who talked to my wife?" "I am," he said. So Manoah asked him, "When your words are fulfilled, what is to be the rule that governs the boy's life and work?" The angel of the Lord answered, "Your wife must do all that I have told her. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, nor drink any wine or other fermented drink, nor eat anything unclean. She must do everything I have commanded her." Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "We would like you to stay until we prepare a young goat for you." This should remind you of when Abram, who wasn't Abraham yet, I don't think, had the three visitors, and he goes and prepares a meal, and he then takes and makes some bread, and he's doing all this to show hospitality. So this is what he's doing here. He's following that pattern. The angel of the Lord replied, "Even though you detain me, I will not eat any of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, offer it to the Lord." Manoah did not realize that it was an angel of the Lord. So the wife thought it was. Did she say it was an angel, or did she say it was a man? All right, I'm not sure. Pregnant, drink unclean, never decided. A woman went and told a man. Yeah, she said a man. He looked like an angel. Okay, so she said a man looked like an angel. He didn't really realize it was an angel. Okay. All right, 17. Then Manoah inquired of the angel of the Lord, "What is your name, so that we may honor you when your words come true?" He replied, "Why do you ask my name? It is beyond understanding." Or it is wonderful. Then Manoah took a young goat together with the grain offering and sacrificed it on a rock to the Lord. And the Lord did an amazing thing while Manoah and his wife watched. As the flame blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. Seeing this, Manoah and his wife fell with their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord did not show himself again to Manoah and his wife, Manoah realized this was the angel of the Lord. "We are doomed to die," he said to his wife. "We have seen God." But his wife answered, "If the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering from our hands, nor show us all these things, or now told us this." The woman gave birth to the boy and named him Samson. He grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Mahana Dan, between Zoar and Eshtaol. Wow, very interesting story here. Yeah. Seeing an angel is do not fear, and other times angel is unaware because looks like a man. Yes, and if you remember, this is very similar to when the angel shows up to Gideon and says, "You great mighty warrior," and Gideon is not afraid. Then a sacrifice to God is made, and then the full revelation or the full unveiling of them being an angel takes place, and Gideon has fear. Same kind of thing here. So a sacrifice to God and worshiping God takes place, then the angel fully reveals, or more fully reveals himself, and then fear and trembling follows. So Judges, we have this pattern of angels showing up, not fully revealing that they're angels, interacting when they fully show they're angels after a sacrifice. Then the traditional response of an angel is fear. I wonder, I'm going to look a word up here so we can get that in the count. 13. I'm just wondering which word for God is used there. We have seen God, 22. We have seen God, Elohim. Okay. I wondered if it was Yahweh. Elohim, if you don't know, in the Old Testament can be used for God singular, and it can be used for God's multiple. So I just was wondering if it was Yahweh, which isn't able to be used for multiple, but Elohim, when there is the sons of God and the gods, Elohim is often the one used. So he says, "We have seen God singular, Elohim." So just wondered that. You know, I'm not sure if, well, I'll say it this way. This is a one way one of my professors would often say it. Ukulele, on your thought there. Oh, I wonder if the angel revealed or if our eyes are opened. And the way my professor described that, I think that might be a distinction without a difference. So there might be a distinction between those two things, but there might not be a difference. If suddenly the angel reveals or suddenly our eyes are open, the resulting reality is still the same. So yeah, if it's hidden and then revealed, or if our eyes are opened in a way to be able to see the fullness, I'm not sure. And I don't know if you were thinking that there would be a difference between those two. I'm thinking there might not be a difference between those two. But interesting thought, though, on process-wise, if it's an unveiling or if it's a blinding. Our worship lead to the fullness. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a really good thought. Yeah, the worship is taking place in a sacrifice, and it's the worship that gives us a fuller understanding of the presence of God, and here the messenger of God, and seeing God was his declaration was, "We have seen God." So in what happened and the glory of what took place, whether he meant that as he thought the angel was a god, which sometimes the angels do get referred to as Elohim, or if he is just saying we have seen the fullness of God revealed to us. But I love it. We are doomed to die. It's like there's the fear and trembling of the angels that we saw when they show up and tell the shepherds. All right, so continuing. So now birth, and Samson is grown, and now, boy, we're already to Samson's marriage, so we don't get stories of him as a kid very much. So that's all right. Samson went down to Timnah, and saw there a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as a wife. This is the first thing that we have that Samson says. Get her for me as a wife. Di Warner, good morning. Where are we in the Bible? We are in Judges. I hope I'm saying that right. I don't know if I've seen you in here before, friend. Thanks for being here. Or is that Dionier? I'm not sure. Help me out with that. We're in Judges 14, and we just had Samson, Dio. Okay, that's what I was getting possibly out of there. All right, Dio. So we just had the whole story of his birth, and then the first thing that he does, he goes over to the Philistines, who are the enemies, who we're not supposed to intermarry with. He sees a woman there and says, hey, she's good looking. Hey, Mom, Dad, go get her so I can marry. Found through Dewston. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. So we're just going through the Bible in a year on stream, and we're in Judges today. So, all right. So he says, Mom, Dad, I would like her. Mom and Dad's reply, I'm not even going to look at what it is yet. It should be what? Oh, sure, son. Let's go get her. We'll help you. Whatever you want. Or it should be, dude, no. You're a Nazarite. You're devoted to God. You're not supposed to be doing that. So those would be the possible directions. Let's see what they actually say. His father and mother replied, isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get your wife? It's funny how, of all of the people, the Philistines get this moniker of uncircumcised. I mean, they're all people that, the Midianites, they didn't get that. The Amorites, they didn't get that. David, probably, if you remember, because he fights Goliath, who's a Philistine, he's always saying, this uncircumcised Philistine. The Philistines get this moniker of the uncircumcised. They're like the worst, the farthest from God. They're nowhere part of the kingdom, and you're going over there, son. We don't think so. This is not a good idea. Even if the tradition would be to marry someone from our clan among our own people, I mean, you could at least marry someone else who's from one of the other tribes, the other clans. I mean, you could at least do that. All right. But Samson said to his father, get her for me. She's the right one for me. His parents did not know that this was from the Lord, who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines, for at that time they were ruling over Israel. So it seems like it's outside of God's plans. His parents see this as outside of God's plans. We have this little interjection in the story from the writer telling us it was part of God's plan. It seems like it's not. It seems like this would be the opposite. So yes, yeah, exactly. Good question there, Dio. What was he doing? It doesn't tell us what he was doing there. It just says he was in Timnah, and yes, that should be a Philistine country or city. I don't know. Maybe it'll say later, but we know a little bit. If you know Samson, he's not always where he's supposed to be and doing what he's supposed to be, and he's not always fully living up to the vow of being a Nazarite. Now, some of that could be if you know people who live under pressure of who their parents are and having to live up to that. It could be some of that kind of thing where you have this thing over your head since birth, and you just feel like you can never measure up, and so you just decide, I can't measure up, so I'll just do what I want. Anyway, don't know if that's what's going on. I'm just saying, perhaps there's something along those lines. So, can you see my messages? Haley99, yes, I see your message. Thanks for being here, friend. Thanks for coming in. Welcome in. We are in the book of Judges, and we're going through the Bible in a year. So thanks for being here. So we're just reading in Samson, and he said, hey, go get that woman over there for me. She's pretty good. I think so. And then Do you sin? Yes, everyone does. And here we have an example of God being able to use it for good. Yes, everyone can sin and everyone does sin. It's pretty easy and it's pretty common, and we can do that in word or deed or even in thought. So Samson, continuing our story, Samson goes down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn a young goat. But he told neither his father nor his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and he liked her. So he wants to get married, but he hasn't talked to her yet. And so now he's done something and he's hiding it. And also, he doesn't tell his parents because there's the Nazirite vow that's there. Hey, Durian Defense, thanks for being here. We're reading through Judges, and we're reading about Samson right now. Sometime later, when he went back to marry her, he turned aside to look at the lion's carcass. And in it he saw a swarm of bees and some honey. He scooped out the honey with his hands and ate as he went along. When he rejoined his parents, he gave them some, and they too ate. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from a lion's carcass. Now his father went down to see the woman, and there Samson held a feast, as was customary for young men. When the people saw him, they chose 30 men to be his companions. Let us tell you a riddle, Samson said to them. If you can give me the answer within 7 days of the feast, I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. If you can't tell me the answer, you must give me 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes. Tell us your riddle, they said. Let's hear it. This seems like a bad idea to be riddling and betting and doing that, but I'm going to guess this was probably a common thing, and he didn't just make up the idea to do that. So I think that's probably true. So he makes this bet. He thinks he's got a riddle that nobody can do, and so they accept the bet. And here's the riddle. Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. Yeah, gambling is generally a bad idea. Yeah, I agree. I know, and I have friends and family who go to the casino and do that. It's like, I'm not good with that. The most I would maybe do would be raffle tickets, where you're buying something that is going to bless something, and you're fine if you don't win because something blessing comes out of it. So I'm good with raffle tickets, I think. But here, he thinks he's more clever than anyone else. And thanks for timing out. I'm not sure where and how to do that. I know where I can go look and do banning, but I didn't want to do all that on the screen. So thanks, Miss Jellybeans. And thanks for the kind responses that you had, everybody. So for 3 days, they could not give an answer. On the 4th day, let's see, what's that say? Well, some manuscripts say the 7th day. Okay. They said to Samson's wife, "Coax your husband into explaining the riddle for us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. Did you invite us here to steal our property?" So here they're upset. They've come here. And notice again, this is not the first time we've had this threat of we're going to burn your house down. Yeah, she used her secret weapon tears. Well, she's going to. Yeah, we haven't got there yet. Reading ahead. Then Samson's wife threw herself on him, sobbing, "You hate me. You don't really love me." You're giving my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer. Now, she could have went a different direction with this. She could have said, hey, um, they've threatened my father and my life. If they don't get the answer to this, you need to call the bet off. Could have went that direction, not the direction she went. But again, if you remember, God was looking for a way to incite a problem between the Philistines and the Israelites. I haven't even explained it to my father and mother, he replied. So why would I explain it to you? I didn't tell my parents. Why would I tell you? This is my riddle. She cried the whole 7 days of the feast. So on the 7th day, he finally told her, because she continued to press him. She, in turn, explained the riddle to her people. Before sunset, on the 7th day, the men of the town said to him, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" Samson said to them, "If you hadn't plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." That's just a funny turn of phrase. If you hadn't plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have solved my riddle. I just find that funny. Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. He went down to Ashkelon, struck down 30 of their men, stripped them of everything, and gave their clothes to those who had explained the riddle. Burning with anger, he returned to his father and mother, and Samson's wife was given to one of his companions who had attended the feast. If you don't succeed, cry again. Yes, I would say that certainly applies here. So Samson's wife, then he's upset. He kills 30 people to get their clothes. He could have, I guess, robbed them instead of killed them, but he kills 30 people, gives them the clothes, and then he's mad. He goes back home. They think, he left. He's not here. So they give his wife to a companion, so he doesn't stick around for the wedding. Later on, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. So, what? Go to visit your wife? He said, "I'm going to my wife's room, but her father won't let me go in." "I was so sure you hated her," he said, "that I gave her to your companion. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead." This is just weird. "I gave her to someone else. I thought you hated her. I needed to have her married. We needed to do that. And now, hey, your younger sister's available. How about her?" Samson said to them, "This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them." So he went out and he caught 300 foxes and he tied them tail to tail in pairs. He then fastened a torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the shocks and standing grain together with the vineyards and the olive groves. I just always thought this was fascinating. Okay, so he's got to catch 300 foxes. This was no small task. 300 foxes, that's going to take a time. And then he catches them, ties them together, and he puts a torch on their tails and lets them go free. Yeah, I can't even catch half a fox. Yeah, I've seen foxes, but I've never tried to catch one. But there's a den, and they're going to go in the den, when I've seen them. Or they're running. I'm not going to catch one running. So he's caught 300 foxes. He ties them together, and then he puts a torch and lets them run free. I don't know if you've ever seen, I've not seen this with foxes, but I've seen this in movies where they'll tie dog tails together, and one dog pulls in one direction and one pulls in the other, and they're just chaotic, running around in circles and going, oh, this would be chaos, running through fields and burning stuff down, and then there's a fire, they're running from the fire. Yeah. Yes, burning the crops is going to cause starvation, potentially. And notice it already had told us it was the wheat harvest, so this is where they're planning to get their crops for a while. And then he also goes into the vineyards and the olive grove. So the Yeah, the foxes don't know where to stay, so they're just running all over the place. So when the Philistines asked who did this, they were told Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because his wife was given to his companion. So they know the full story. So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. So this was the threat of what would happen if they didn't get the answer to the riddle. What ends up happening anyway? They end up doing that. So Samson said together, since you have acted like this, I swear that I won't stop until I get my revenge on you. He attacked them vigorously and slaughtered many of them. Then he went down and stayed in a cave in the rock of Edom. So he's upset about an action. The action was because of a previous action. He then does more things. So he kills 30 people to pay the bet. He leaves. His wife is given away. He's upset. His wife is given away. He destroys crops. They destroy and kill the household of his wife and father. So doesn't say whether or not the younger sister was in there, but perhaps. And so then he seeks revenge for the revenge that was done to him. This sounds a little bit like what happens in places that just have fighting continuously is you retaliate, I retaliate, you retaliate, I retaliate, and nobody ever stops. Thank you, Darian Defense, Durian, and thanks for being here. Yeah, we're going through, so yeah, I just say if you're behind, that's fine. Get caught up when you can, and some days I miss, and we try to get caught up. So, morning, Polygon Pastor. Thanks for being in here, friend. We are in the book of Judges, and we're reading through Samson. So, continuing in verse 9. The Philistines went up and camped in Judah, spreading out near Lehi. The people of Judah asked, "Why have you come to fight us?" "We have come to take Samson prisoner," they answered, "to do to him as he did to us." So yes, the continuing retaliation. Then 3,000 men from Judah went down to the cave in the rock of Edom and said to Samson, "Do you realize that the Philistines are rulers over us? What have you done to us?" Yes, fun book. Yes, we are in some of the fun that's happening. So he is engaging and he's hiding, and now they're coming to get him and engaging the people of Judah to turn him over. And they're like, "Dude, don't you know they're our rulers?" He's like, "Yeah." So he answers, "I merely did to them what they did to me." So his explanation is, I did what they did. They said to him, "We've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." Samson said, "Swear to me that you won't kill me yourself." "Agreed," they answered. "We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you." So they bound him with 2 new ropes and led him up from the rock. As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him shouting. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. The ropes on his arms became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Then Samson said, "With a donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. With a donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men." When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Ramoth Lehi, which means Jawbone Hill. Because he was very thirsty, he cried out to the Lord, "You have given me your strength, your servant, this great victory. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" Then God opened up a hollow place in Lehi, and water came out of it. When Samson drank, his strength returned, and he was revived. So the spring was called En Hakar. Caller's Spring, and it is still there in Lehi. Samson led Israel for 20 years in the days of the Philistines. So, discourse. So Philistines are rulers at this point. The pieces are coming together. Yes. So the Philistines are rulers over the people of Israel. And so Samson went over there and got engaged. We asked the question, why did he go over there? It doesn't tell us, but we see that God was using it to incite the Israelites to engage one another, or engage the Philistines and overthrow them. And again, here, he doesn't even call them the Philistines here. He just calls them the uncircumcised. Maybe you know this, Polygon Pastor. I was noticing this, and I know David always refers to the Philistines as those uncircumcised. But as we've been going through Judges, I haven't noticed that moniker being thrown at any of the other Canaanites that are around, or the Amorites, or the Hittites. That's not thrown. I've only seen it show up here, the Philistines. So I don't know if you know, is that just exclusively used against them? Is it like this ultimate insult against them, or not? Maybe it does show up other places. I just was noticing that possible trend. So, all right. So now we have Samson and Delilah, and if you want a good chuckle, there's Tim Hawkins. I don't know if you know him. He's a Christian comedian, singer. And so he has a song that Hey There Delilah, which is pretty funny. I'd play it on stream, but I don't want to get doxxed in any way, so, or demonetized or any of that kind of stuff. So, all right, so we'll continue in chapter 16. So one day, Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her. The people in Gaza were told, Samson is here. So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, at dawn we'll kill him. Weird. It's encouraging to know God can work through imperfect people. Yeah, Samson is not a perfect person, and he does still listen to prayers, yes. Yeah, well, other places in the text, it has said the uncircumcised Philistines, but here he's just calling them the uncircumcised. So yeah, I just made that observations. I don't know if someone else has done that before, but I thought maybe I like to ask pastors when I think of things, whether they know or not. And sometimes you go to commentaries, they're not always going to have that in there either. You do remember Tim Hawkins' song? Yeah, it's pretty funny. Yes, So Delilah was not the first Philistine woman that he was engaged to. No, and that's one of the things that happens is we get some of these stories, the events of the story merged together in our minds, and we don't look at them all the time. So also, going to a prostitute. This could have been, and often we just think of prostitutes only from the standpoint of they are people who are working, whether forced or otherwise, to make money. That wasn't always the case. Often you would have cult prostitutes, so they would be at the house of worship of foreign gods. Doesn't specifically tell us here. There also would be prostitutes around at harvest time. So if you have images of the Old West after a cattle drive and the guys coming into town and heading to the saloon, so those would also be same kinds of things that would have been common. So I'm not sure here, but yeah, if we're thinking that Delilah was the only woman, here's another woman that was also there. So they're laying in wait for him to kill him at dawn. But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up and took hold of the doors of the city gate together with the two posts, and he tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. So they lock him inside of the city gate. The gates are closed at night. He wants to leave. He busts down the door, carries off the city gate, and takes it up the hill. This is not a guy I want to mess with. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. So we have this little interlude, and then we get to Delilah. Yeah, the Romans and Greeks had temple prostitutes. So they're not the first ones. Often that would be the case with gods, and it would be considered an act of worship of the gods. But I don't know if that was the case here with that, but now we've got into perhaps the part of the story we're most familiar with, the Delilah part of the story. So the rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him, so we might tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So it's giving us weights. And then, to me, I want to know the value of what a shekel of silver is. And you know, if you're going to give me pounds, I don't know what pounds. I know what a troy ounce is. So if there's 16 ounces in a pound, you're going to be 28 pounds. That's a good portion of silver. So Samson's the one who's fallen in love. We don't know Delilah's emotional or affection for Samson, but word gets out really quick, and they're looking for a way to get him, so they come to Delilah. So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength, and how you can be tied up and subdued." Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man." So do you think that Samson has an idea or not that she's trying to figure out a secret to share it? That's what happened previously when a woman found out a secret. She shared it. So maybe he's inclined to that, and he's telling her a fable to see. I don't know. As I read through the story and it's the repetition of it, I would think, dude, you'd get this. But I'm just wondering here out loud at the beginning, does he know and understand what she's doing? Or is he just a prankster, it seems? He likes jokes, he likes riddles, and so he's just having fun with her. Could be that direction. So then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied him with them. With men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah said to Samson, "You've made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied." So she answers and speaks first. "You lied to me." She's giving him a guilt trip here. Why doesn't he respond with, "Yeah, and you tried to trick me so that you could steal my strength. This isn't cool." Doesn't do that. Samson just seems, I don't want to say a dumb brute because he's got riddles and stuff like that, but he just seems oblivious to in some ways. Thank you. I try to get through and figure out sometimes what's going on. We don't always have that, and we might not always know. And I try to make clear if I'm speculating, because it could be more than one thing. And I find asking questions in that regard helps me to understand the story and remember it. So then the rulers of the Philistines. Okay, so you've made a fool of me. So verse 11, he said, "If anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as other men." So, okay, let me give you another fable. So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. Then the men hidden in the room. Then with the men hidden in the room, she called him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the ropes off his arms as if they were threads. Delilah said to Samson, "All this time you have been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." Okay, so let me get this straight. How is he making a fool of her? The only way he's making a fool of her if somebody else is there to see it. Does Samson know that the men are in the other room? Do they come out when she cries? I mean, is he killing these men that are there every time? Is that part of the ruse to get him to understand that they really are there? Otherwise, how many times are you going to let her tie you up and have her cry, "The Philistines are upon you," when you're sleeping and wake up? Because I'm assuming, and I think everyone does, he had to be asleep to be tied up. He's not just sitting there letting her, "Oh, yes, here's my hands, Delilah. I told you this would work. Tie me up now. Oh, yes, let me break these. Oh." No, I mean, we all kind of assume, and that's the way that she must be doing this when he's asleep, tying him up, binding him, sneaking in the guys who are going to attack him. But is he oblivious to the guys in the other room through this whole thing? And then if he is, why does he keep letting her do this? Yeah, maybe he thinks this is some kind of fun game. Yeah, might be playing around. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but the fact she keeps saying, "You keep making a fool of me," I don't know. That to me doesn't seem like, I don't know. Anyway, all this time you've been making fun of me and lying to me. Tell me how you might be tied. Reminds you of an ex you should have learned from Samson. Well, yeah, I think we all should learn from Samson. I got that. Yeah, in this part it does read like he has a lot more brawn than brain, but this also could just be arrogance on some level and pride that he has. I've kind of read it that way too, and I'll point that out when we get to it later. He replied, "If you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric of the loom and tighten it with a pin, I'll become as weak as other men." So while he was sleeping, see, this one says while he was sleeping. The other ones don't. So maybe the other ones were more of a game. I don't know. Delilah took the 7 braids of his head, wove them in the fabric, and tightened it with a pin. Oh, it's a loom instead. Yeah, okay. Instead of fabric, it could have been a loom. Yeah. Again, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke from his sleep and pulled up the pin of the loom with the fabric. Then she said to him, "How can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you've made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength." With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. The other thing we don't know is how long is it between each of these 3 events? Is this in a week's time? Is this in a month's time? Is this over 3 months' time? Is it 3 months or 6 months in between? We don't know the frequency and how often this is happening. So. Polygon Pastor, this gives me Peter denying Jesus 3 times vibes. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Perhaps Samson really loves her, and this is him trying to trust her when he's been burned in the past. Oh, interesting. Yeah, and the pride vibes. I think the pride vibes show up a little bit in the humility that he has later on. So that's why I'm alluding to. Oh, yeah. Glad to have you in here. That's a good observation with Peter. I don't know if I've seen that before. And the repetition of the 3 times. I've always leaned towards the pride, but I could be simply he wanted this woman and she did the typical thing. "I'll leave you if you don't do X." Yeah. The ultimate nag. Yes. I think that she has that bad reputation for being that, and that's how we've kind of done for her. So, all right. So she now full on. So if you didn't get it before, oh yeah, the Polygon Pastor. The last verse makes it seem like she loves his strength more than she loves him. Loves the gift more than the giver. Yeah. Dio, and it's only short snippets during nighttime. Does Samson have a job during the day? Lots of missed details, and we probably don't need to know. But yeah, good point there. We've got big chunks of time. Most of what we have is him fighting the Philistines. What's his day job? Is it farming? Is it a vineyard? Yeah, we don't know. We don't know what he does, or yeah, if he's living with his parents, not living with his parents, when those kinds of things. And that wouldn't be an uncommon thing because the land would be your land to inherit, so you wouldn't necessarily move away. But he certainly comes and goes freely as he decides. But he is professing love, and she's using that as well. She's not the first. She won't be the last person to make the plea that you need to do something to prove you love me. People do that. Yeah, we have to assume he's got to be doing something to get food, whether it's his family providing or others. So, yeah, don't know. Good questions. Those are good questions. I like those. Here, it's hard to speculate, other than the mention of harvest and things would lead me to say maybe he does some farming for his family, but maybe he doesn't. I don't know. So continuing in 17. So he told her not everything. No razor has ever been used on my head, he said, because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as other men. When Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, "Come back at once. He has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hand. After putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him. And his strength left him. Oh, and he began to weaken. Okay. Then she called, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He woke up from sleeping and thought, "I'll go out as before and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza, binding him with bronze shackles. They set him to grinding grain in the prison. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. More details would always be helpful. I find myself thinking that when I read the Bible, looks like he would have woke up. It's hard to say. It depends on what kind of sleeper you are. I could imagine someone possibly shaving my head. But notice this time it mentions that she puts him to sleep on her lap. And so if you're sitting on someone's lap and they're rubbing your head when you're going to sleep and someone is then shaving, and remember, it's not an electric razor that's making noise. It's going to be a straight blade or scissors that are cutting. You could do that and gently move someone's head, I think, while they're sleeping and do pretty good. And probably we don't need to think of it as a razor cut that's totally, skin and everything gone. Simply cutting the hair alone would have done it. Well, and you know what? It says asleep on his lap. Could have, alcohol could have been involved. However, he wasn't supposed to touch alcohol, and I don't believe we've seen anything to this point that shows that he did take or drink at any time. I don't think we have any evidence. So this is where you start looking through and go, oh, the vow means he can't do this. We've never had a mention that he did do it, so we might need to assume he never did. He did live up to that part of the vow. Here now he shared his secret. The one thing I wondered is why, when his hair was in the loom, didn't the hair get caught or pulled out, and that would have helped him lose his strength by hair being pulled? I don't know, but it did say it was like in braids, and braids are stronger than individual hair. So, cut off the braids. Yeah, I could have cut off the braids and donated them to Locks of Love. That would be an interesting thing. Oh, would they have had some other kind of drug, poppies or something? Yeah, there certainly would have been other things that would have been sleep aids that they could have used to help him fall asleep. Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. It could have just been, it's the end of the day, it's tired, she's trying to make sure she's got somebody on the ready to come in. But what was interesting to me, also, we haven't talked about, is this time she saw that he had told her everything. How does she know? Is his demeanor that different when he was doing the other stories and joking, and this time he's totally serious about it? I find that fascinating. This time she says, I know it's the real thing. She goes and says, they come with the money this time. They didn't come with the money the previous times that it didn't say. You're thinking, is he fed something he wouldn't have recognized? Yeah, could be. Could be. Good thoughts. We don't know for sure, but certainly a possibility. He might be a super sound sleeper like my husband who could sleep through a hurricane. Yeah, I'm a pretty super sound sleeper. The only time that I've not been a sound sleeper is when my kids were little and they would cry, and I could wake up in the middle of the night at their cry and get up and take care of them. When they were old enough to stop crying, that was gone. I don't wake up for anybody else's kids. They're not mine. I'm not on duty to take care of. I'm not babysitter duty. So, all right. So he now shares the secret. He actually loses his strength when his hair is cut. I've wondered about why the gouging out of his eyes, other than for humiliation. It's just a fascinating thought, or detail, I should say. Fascinating detail. One of the first things they do when they see him is gouge out his eyes. Maybe that was a common practice of the Philistines. I don't know. Do you know, Polygon Pastor, is that a common practice to gouge out people's eyes? It's the only occurrence I remember reading really in Scripture is here with Samson. And maybe it's if he does get his strength back later, he won't be able to do anything. I'm not sure. Just an interesting thing. And boy, if you whenever people say, well, what sense would you rather lose? Your hearing, your eyesight, your taste, your smell, all those things. Eyesight's always the top of my list. The one that to me would be the worst one to lose. Taste, yeah, that would not be great. Touch, yeah, you've got some damage you could do to your body. Hearing, that wouldn't be good. But just sight, the beauty that is all around. I would just hate to miss being able to see beauty. All right, so we've got the death of Samson. So it looks like we're going to finish Samson today. Okay, so we're going to have all of Samson. Yeah, and gouging out eyes, I would say, is pretty gruesome. So, yeah, so I'm wondering if that was an insurance if they got it wrong. Yeah, that was one thought, or I think it's the other direction of humiliation kind of a thing. I don't know. This is one of those things I ask and I wonder these questions, but I want the text to tell me. I can go to commentaries and I can read other things, but I start with what does the text tell me, or what do other places in Scripture tell me, versus let's go and let's just have somebody else tell me all this information. I like to find it for myself. So don't find it here, so then later I can go look it up. All right, so let's finish this story. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate, saying, our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. So we know his hair has begun to grow back. So they didn't have this festival immediately. I don't know how long your hair grows back. When it says his hair began to grow back, I don't know how long it has to get for him to get strength. Let's just say if his hair had never been cut and it was down to his waist, does it have to get shoulder length for the strength to come back? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of how long would it take for your hair to grow back. Mine grows pretty darn quick. And so, not that I would do this, but if I wanted a mullet, I could probably have a mullet in 5 months. And if this took place, let's just say in the spring, and they're going to wait till harvest to have this celebration, you might have a 5-month period of time. His hair could grow back. Maybe Samson has a nice mullet. It's not the image I've ever thought of. That's long enough for him to have strength. Oh, interesting thought. Yeah, disadvantage to be blind. And then Polygon Pastor says, honestly, I wonder if one of the aims of this story is to make the Philistines into a caricature of conniving, deceptive people, especially when Delilah gets duped 3 times and all the backhand dealing. Well, they certainly don't come off as great. Yeah, I think most people need a haircut once a month. I hear mullets are back in style. Yes, I won't be getting a mullet, though, even if they're in style. Looks like we have a goal to look forward to at 5. No, I might. Well, oddly enough, I do grow my hair longer in the summer, and I have it short in the winter. So I'm hitting that time of year where I probably won't get a haircut until fall anyway. So it won't be a mullet because I'm not going to party in the front, business in the front and party in the back. I keep it pretty tight and needy at times, and other times just a fro. But that will have to be channel points to ever see a fro on stream because my hat's better. All right. Anyway, we've been sidetracked enough speculating on things of hair growth and being blind. Okay. So when the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, our God has delivered our enemies into our hands, the one who laid waste our land and multiplied our slain. Now, this is set over, and it says they said, but the way it's also set over, this could have been a song that they're praising. It's a cheer, it's a chant, it's an ongoing thing. So, secret mullet on the hat confirmed. No. Let's get serious and talk about the text. So they're cheering their God because Samson's been slain. So now, while they were in high spirits, they shouted, bring out Samson to entertain us. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. I don't know what it means to perform, but they just want to laugh and make fun of him. So it could be things similar to Jesus when this was a common Roman thing, but it could have gone back earlier where they would have people blindfolded, they would hit you, and they would say, tell us who hit you. And after they would unblindfold you, who among all these people hit you? And if you got it wrong, they would all hit you again. So it could be some kind of entertainment thing like that where he's blind. Hey, tell us who hit you. Tell me where so-and-so is. And this kind of making fun of him, unable to actually, and they're so that performing could be mockery is the point I was getting at. When they stood him again among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I might lean against them. Notice the deception here. So I might lean against them. Now the temple was crowded with men and women. All the rulers of the Philistines were there, and on the roof were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. So I went and looked up pictures of these temples. They wouldn't have big open spaces like we can as far as building structure. So you wouldn't be able to have, so you're going to have pillars throughout the interior. And I've seen an image. So they're actually not necessarily a great design, but they would have 2 center pillars that would support the entirety of the building, or enough so that if they collapsed, the rest of the building, like dominoes, would be able to collapse. So he's asking to go to specifically those 2 center pillars that are the weight-bearing load for the whole temple. And he's like, so I can lean on them. So there were other pillars, but he's asking specifically to go to those 2 Um, Now, so we have the temple crowded, and the number of people on the roof is about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars of which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. Samson said, Let me die with the Philistines. Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than while he was alive. I always found that an interesting thing. So if you think about, now he does ask, hey, I want vengeance for my eyes, but here he seems a lot more humble in the way that he is God, remember me. You had given me strength. He's not saying it directly, but I'm reading in that he is saying, I took for granted the strength I had. I felt it was my strength, not your strength. Now I'm praying for your strength to come into me. That might be why he frivolously told her, because he believed it was his strength and it really didn't have to do with his hair. He was just telling the Nazirite vows, and it ended up costing him his strength. Now he's humble and saying, God, I want to repay for what they've done. Please strengthen me just once more. And his rationale is, my eyes. It gouged out my eyes. I want to repay that. So Samson's handlers were fired after the decision. Well, they would have had to have made it out. I think his handlers were probably right there next to him. And as soon as he started pushing, they're like, oh, that look on your face when you know that you've done something wrong and you can't stop the train wreck that's happening from finishing happening. Yeah. If they'd survived, yeah, they probably were reprimanded and lost their job. Yeah, but I think they're buried under other loads. Yeah, other workloads. Or yeah, if they got out, they got even a worse job than handling Samson. Okay. Then his brothers and his father's whole family went down to get him. They brought him back and buried him in Zohar and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah his father. He had led Israel 20 years. So we already had that summary earlier before we got into Delilah of the 20 years. And so is that a summary here of what he did here? And then the Delilah part is he's not really leading Israel, because we don't have any actions that are directed of doing anything other than here at his death. That's the only thing that we have. Or maybe that was within the 20th year that all of the stuff with Delilah happens. Not sure. So yeah, so Samson got the last laugh. That is a good way to put it. He got the last laugh. The side question that I've had people ask, and I don't have an answer to it, is we have the thought that taking one's own life is well, it's certainly not a good thing to do. And I certainly, anyone who's thinking about it, I would love to talk with you and encourage you and tell you don't do that. But here he is doing it in a sacrificial way to take the enemy out. Is that a permissible thing in battle, to sacrifice oneself and to do an action that you know will lead to death? I view it more in that sense than in the sense of taking one's own life. Yes, he knows as soon as he pushes these pillars, he's probably not going to survive. He doesn't survive. And his family comes and honors him by retrieving him and bringing him back. I think there's twofold there. One, the Philistines can't then parade his body around afterwards, which would be a customary thing to do, is to parade bodies around of the dead to taunt and to show your victory over an enemy. So they want to make sure that doesn't happen. But they're also doing it, not just the people of Israel. They're doing it and bringing him back and burying him in the family. They're honoring him and his life. I'm sure they were. It just made me think about the guys that actually agreed to his request. Yes, yes. Oh yeah, I knew what you're talking about. Yeah, I was thinking the guys that agreed to his request, they may have been standing right there with him when it happened. But you're right. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they were the ones that, hey, can you take me over there? I know I'm supposed to be over here, and I was over entertaining, and then they leave because they're servants and they're doing something else, and they're fetching water somewhere, and they're outside, and all of a sudden, I'm trying to think what movie that is. I don't know, but there's a movie that was coming to mind where there's a person who's always just outside the event, the accident, and then they slowly walk away so nobody sees that they did it. During Samson's ultimate humiliation, he humbled himself and I guess honored. That's a good thought. I'm not sure if he honored himself there or not. I mean, we remember him, and he's remembered in Scripture because of the victory that he has, also from the many faults that he has. But I do see the humility there, but I'm not sure because the honor that he would have would only be in his death and remembering and talking about that he did a great thing, if that makes sense. It would be even more embarrassing if you put me next to those pillars. Yeah. Here's another thought too. I don't remember how wide they are, but if you have strength, it's here pushing from close, not at full reach. You have less strength at full reach than you do up close. So, and you have less strength in your hands than you have in your feet. So if you leaned against one and pushed with your feet on the other, that might be what I would have to do. I'm also short, so my wingspan isn't that big. So I don't know how easy that would have been to push the pillars down, but God gave him enough strength to do it, and God answered his request. And we had that pointed out earlier that God does answer the prayers of imperfect people. So, hey, the lift, good to have you in here. Yeah, we're doing well. We just finished through Judges. That's what we've got for our reading for today.